warm, welcoming place. I couldn't ask for a better new community. So I'll tell you a little bit about the piece, but also how it kind of fits into the larger novel, because it has a lot to do with everything that happened Tuesday. So the kind of my window into this novel was actually that when I was in West Africa, I came across a long time ago, I came across slavery, and on my trips back, I began to understand what I was looking at. Between times I would read about slavery. In 2013, I went to Mauritania, which has a population, 20% of the Mauritanian population is actually brutally enslaved. So this novel is told in two different voices. One of the voices is the voice of a woman who has escaped Mauritanian slavery, but she's in Morocco with no papers. The other voice is kind of different, and this is what you're going to hear tonight. It's the woman who ends up kidnapping her child. So, when Tuesday happened, I think, and those of you who know me on Facebook know, I immediately started cracking jokes because that's how I sort of handle it, But one of the reasons I've had this aimless American woman in this book is that I feel like if you are to struggle, you must have air. In any sort of endeavor you would take, certainly heavy political ones, there has to be air. So with that being said, I will stop talking and offer you this air.
One week with no temp assignment had turned into a second week of unemployment on Marika's sofa, and then a third week of unemployment in her brother's home office. The fourth week, Kathy reloaded her 4 U-Haul boxes back into the trunk of her old Ford and had driven back home to Danville. Back to her mother's house. Back to the small room she slept in as a teenager. In an attempt to infuse some dignity into the situation, she stripped her bed of its cotton candy-colored comforter and borrowed a sensible old quilt from her mother's room. At long last, she took down her Purple Rain poster and the vintage Ferrari centerfold she'd ripped and engraved from the Boyle County Public Library's copy of Car and Driver. Finding that the sun had faded the paint all around both of these, she covered the bright white squares of paint she left behind with framed prints of plants she found at a yard sale. She might have repainted the walls, but she realized that sprucing up the room was less of an adult thing to do than making to herself a simple admission of defeat. Her mother's mortgage insurance had temporarily kicked into effect. The house was hers for the time being, and she was mired then in this twilight of having nothing adult to do save maintain the physical state of adulthood. She needed to keep the 64 inches of her height, pluck the chin hairs that had started surprising her when she looked at herself in the rearview mirror of her car. Maybe get a mammogram. She'd read once in the ladies' magazines that a uterus, in the absence of enough sexual activity, would actually start to tilt, which was why she was now shoving a cream-cabled sweater over her head, adding to herself blue jeans, fur-lined suede boots, and a triple-down coat. She didn't know whether she was hugging herself out of the falling snow or for her low expectations of this second date with Kenneth, or against her duly aching bottom rear molar, or for the vague rural toughness she felt creeping into her since she moved back to Danville. She felt her accent changing, gradually back to the ones she'd grown up speaking, the same one most of the customers of Hollywood Video used, the same one John Cougar Mellencamp used when he sang Small Town on stage at Farm Aid. Even back at Hollywood Video, where Keith had happily rehired her, she felt herself walking with the same fearful swagger she'd had as a teen, one hand shoved in her pants pocket, the tips of her fingers curled lovingly around her butane lighter, her head hunched so that the curls hung over the front collar of her jacket, Hunched that way, her hair was long enough to hide her face on the side she leaned into. Even if she dared smile, exactly half the world around her wouldn't see it. She met Kenneth while sitting in a park on the lunch break. The bench had a hard, curving slats for a seat, and it was painted green in the same way the Louisville park benches were. And the JCs of Danville had even once built in the middle of the park a cement fountain that now looked to be rotting away in layers. A boy with a gold stud in his lips skateboarded across the bowl of the empty fountain, looking in his concentration much like the poor cherub stationed around the fountain base. A man with hair so matted on the back of his head it had hardened to a Gumby-style peak, sat with his winter coat and several boxes of belongings in the grocery cart. Kathy was sure that if she closed her eyes and took a deep gulp, she'd smell urine. The one fundamental difference between a park in the county and a park in the city was that in rural areas, people were more discreet about their pot. A large, magnificently groomed labradoodle came near her bench to sniff her shoes. Then she patted its head. "Girl or boy?" she asked the man holding its leash. "Who, me? I'm a boy," he said. He chuckled at his own joke in a false way that suggested he told it before. He was as compulsively groomed as his dog, with a goatee and leather sandals. He looked like somebody who probably smoked pot or knew where to get it. He looked like someone who might then be essential. "I'm Kenneth," he said, extending his hand. "Sit," he said brusquely to the dog. "Sadie, you sit." The dog obeyed and licked her tongue out to pant while moving her head from side to side to take in the park. She had a great fringe of curly fur left uncut at the crown of her head as though she'd been groomed to resemble a lion. Kenny? Kathy said, shaking his hand. "It's my lunch break and I have 7 minutes left. I'm a video store clerk. What are you?" Kenneth's left cheek turned blotchy, but he sat down beside her on the bench. "What am I? A human being on the planet? A peace freak and an environmental activist? A liberal and a feminist?" He smiled. "So let's try this again," he said. "What are you?" She smiled back. "So you're a professor at Center. Like I said, I'm a video store clerk. The rest, you'll have to find out some other way." She rose to leave, and he put the dog's leash in his mouth, then retrieved his wallet from the back of his pocket and took out a business card. "Thanks," she said, taking it. She squinted in the sun. His last name was Love? He replaced his wallet. "You have one?" he said, working his voice around the leash. "Well, like I said, But the labradoodle had seen something, a squirrel or a chipmunk, and in one smooth movement, jerked out of the leash free from Kenneth's mouth. "Stay, Sadie, stay! You stay!" Kenneth yelled, but the dog was running wildly off into the park, no longer willing to be Kenneth's minion. "Sadie!" he yelled repeatedly, and finally, she stopped running and squatted to poop. Kick grass, then move forward and squat again. "Oh, Sadie," Kenneth whined, and Kathy could hear his exasperation all the way across the field. He squatted 5 times with his little plastic bag. "Good luck with that," Kathy said. Kenneth waved. "Call me sometime," he said. "Please?" It had been so easy. And yet, she'd been home almost a year from the University of Kentucky without so much as a cat call on the street. Not that the feeling was mutual, because Danville was stocked mostly of men who were not her type. Almost anyone over the age of 19 was married. The ones who weren't were bloated and corn-fed with thick accents and telltale alcoholic wariness in their watery blue eyes. The smartest, funniest guys from our high school had either skipped town altogether or turned out to do the wrong things with their lives. They were lawyers or real estate brokers or insurance adjusters. It was like being in a burning ship, water all around her, and no one could put out the fire. There was, too, the problem of her becoming more pickier about them since Catherine's death. as if she were standing in as the responsible, discriminating adult in the situation. Kathy remembered her mother, the night of her senior prom, standing in the narrow hallway, blocking her way. Kathy had been trying to get to the front door to be picked up by Thomas Studstill, a tall, filled-out 18-year-old sophomore from Chicago who spent most of his life in detention and had to be told by Catherine not to sit outside in his car and hump for her daughter. Thomas was 200 kinds of fineness. And just as Kenneth Love was now, though Catherine didn't know all the details about his detention, she still smelled the danger. "Is that boy a Christian?" Catherine had asked her then. Kathy leaned into her hair and rolled her eyes. "You know, a lot of these boys think they're too cute for the good Lord." "Mom, I don't know. We've only been going out 2 months." "Well, I think that's something you would know immediately. You will know the right boy by his Christian walk." "Mom, excuse me." Catherine had opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. She hugged her daughter. She had stood almost 4 inches shorter, so Kathy had to bend into it. And she remembered finding, when she got that close, that her mother smelled like cough syrup and bath balls. "I just want my oldest baby to have goodness in her life," she said into Kathy's hair. "Thanks, Mom," Kathy had said. "I know." She stood up and looked at her mother. Catherine had looked so peaceable in her bright blue nightgown, so calm and without sin, that as Kathy stepped outside now into the cold, the memory made her heart ache, along with her tooth. Not many people had come out driving in the falling snow, but there was an accident on the route to Kenneth's house. Both drivers had stepped out of their cars to lean over the point of impact and consult. The snow fell into the air, whitening it. The broken taillight of the wrong car glowed white into the night. A negative space of missing bumper fell off after a sticker that read, "I trust President George W. Bush." Kathy turned into the main drag of Main Street and noticed a billboard she'd never seen in the daytime. "Don't die with your teeth in a glass." A man in a black suit smiled over 10 feet of the billboard, offering his 1-800 number for a complimentary consultation. She made a left at the medical recycling shop Kenneth had told her to look out for and marveled at the grisliness of the concept. It wasn't like an electric bed would be for sale because the patient lying in it had suddenly risen to go skiing. She passed Rugomini's, a restaurant Kenneth said would be near his house, and then cruised the 2 blocks to 34 West Cherry, which was a stately old 2-story with peeling paint. It sat near the end of the street, so that as she parked her car and got out, she could see the space of darkness that Clark's Run made beyond the trees. She couldn't hear rippling or gushing, just wind. The creek must have frozen. "Hi there," Kenneth said. He was standing on his porch with a highball glass in his hand. He trimmed his goatee into a small soul patch. "Hey." She came to the sidewalk and started up the path to his stone steps. "Welcome to Love Manor," he said as he cleared the porch. "Is Love even your real last name?" "Of course it is. You think I just pass out fake business cards to women?" "Well, it must be terrific having a name like that." He genuinely considered this, putting his glass down at his side. "It's not at all. People expect more of you." He welcomed her into his house and took her coat, which he took to some unseen upstairs room she was certain he'd try to lure her into later. And then they both sat on his black leather couch in front of the small blaze he had crackling in his fireplace. The house was probably a century old, and the living room was big enough that when they smoked a joint, the smoke merely dissipated, rather than gathering itself in its usual skunky smog. On the first date, in his car after dinner and the movie, they'd smoked. Kenneth had the good stuff, the stuff that made Kathy laugh at all his corny jokes and made her forget about her dwindling bank balance and her unfinished comp lit degree. the hundreds of asteroids drifting dangerously close to Earth. Kenneth himself, while smoking, turned warm and expansive and confessional. He told her how he'd grown up poor in Minneapolis in a shotgun house with a leaky roof. The third date, he told her that he'd always wanted to play the drums. He'd taken lessons as an adult, he said, only to find out he didn't have the coordination. And at some point, while Kathy was staring up at the ceiling trying to reconjure her toothache, Kenneth got up and put on some Latin jazz. He kissed her, tasting so strongly of marijuana that she wondered if kissing could constitute some extra form of a contact high. Hey, he said, the fire's pretty hot now. Let me see what you're wearing under that sweater. He pulled it over her head and she was suddenly glad she wore her demi bra, the one from the Dream Angels collection. Wow, he said. He seemed glad too. How old are you anyway, he asked. 28. And yourself? Oh, a little older than that. 50? She asked. And in their shared high, they both laughed hysterically at the plausibility of this. He took a draw, held it, and looked in her eyes. 42, he said on the exhale. 42? She asked. And they laughed some more. They smoked down to the roach and kissed again. A wet kiss of urgency and possibility, and then Kenneth unbuttoned his shirt and threw it on the floor in front of the fireplace. What's that tattoo all about? Kathy asked, skating her fingers across his bicep. Oh, this is my midlife crisis. It's a quote from Che Guevara. In Latin? Che Guevara spoke Latin? Kenneth laughed until his eyes moistened, and he said, we cannot be sure of having something to live for unless we are willing to die for it, Che Guevara. I did it all for the nookie, Kathy said. Limp biscuit. Kenneth kissed her again, then stripped them both down to their underwear. 42, Kathy said, and you've never been married? Nope. Aren't you scared that not pairing off might kill you? Nope. Aren't you afraid of dying alone? Everyone dies alone. No, they don't. They do. There might be other people in the room, or if it's in an atomic bomb or a shipwreck, there might be other people dying at the same time. But I'd say the dying itself is probably a pretty solitary experience. He pulled her from the couch and led her up the creaky hardwood stairs to his bedroom, where, it turned out, he hadn't put her coat. The wallpaper seemed to be composed of paisleys and maybe fishing lures, and she felt disoriented, but she put it down to the pot. He turned his bedspread back and gently laid her down on the sheets, which smelled like they were fresh out of the dryer. He slid under the bedspread next to her and put his hand on the dip of her waist, then kissed her some more. She put her leg atop his. He was firm, oh, so firm, all over. He didn't look 42. Hey, he said towardly, I've never made it with a black chick before. She had closed her eyes and was smiling with the residual thought that she was about to lick some part of him. But with the slowness that turned into a suddenness, she realized what he had just said. It was as though someone had taken a phonograph needle and scratched. Excuse-moi, she said. I've never made it with a black chick. You're my first. Oh, she blinked. Her heart was wearing off. Am I part of your midlife crisis then? Kenneth blinked. The lighting in the room hadn't turned up, but the lighting in his brain had. I just meant I've never been with a black woman is all. And this is notable why? What are you expecting then? One of his cheeks was turning blotchy, the same way it had in the park, and she thought, what a shame for that. What a shame for him that his disappointment should be so transparent. Go ahead, she said. Explain what you mean. Make it worse. She sat up and put her hands behind her back to snap her bra back together, I've got to be going. No, wait, sorry, that was the wrong thing. I'd say, don't go, please. May I buy you dinner? No. You gotta eat, please. He had a point. The sensation of hunger was so strong that it overpowered even the ache in her molar. They walked to their knees in silence, and Kathy thought about how they were all wrong. All the men in the world. She did as Thomas did all the way into the summer after she graduated high school, until the evening he took her down for a ride down by the curvy part of Route 150 in his new Mustang. Lightning bugs had just come out for the evening, and as they drove through a hollow thick with trees, the luminescent specks zipped by the open windows. "Them little fuckers," Thomas had said. "Let's watch them light up a windshield." He sped up for half a mile, hugging cars, and by the time he slowed down, he killed about a dozen of them. Kathy had wanted to lean out the window and puke. Men, they're all wrong. Every single one of them. Wrong. Kenneth ordered eggplant parmesan and a pizza and asked for an extra plate for each of them so they could split. And as she was rolling spaghetti around her fork, Kathy remembered to ask, "Where was Sadie? Why wasn't she at the house?" "Sadie? Your dog." "Oh," Kenneth said, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. He looked conspiratorially around the restaurant. "She's not mine." "What?" "Anymore. I mean, she's not mine. I gave her to..." "You gave her away?" "Yeah," he said. "It just wasn't love, I guess. But I met you after all." After dinner, they walked back to Kenneth's house. It had stopped snowing, but it was colder and the wind blew harder, and maybe Kathy's jaw ached along with her, and it made Kathy's jaw ache along with her tooth. When they got back inside, they messed around on the couch, but the moment was gone. In the spotlight of awareness between them, Kenneth's penis did nothing. She'd driven home and told herself it was okay. She'd have to get her uterus untilted some other time. And it was nice to be in her mother's house, in her childhood bed, feeling honest.